I'm joined now by Richard Painter, former chief White House ethics lawyer under George W. Bush, and Malcolm Nance, U.S. intelligence and terrorism expert and author of The Plot to Hack America. Malcolm, are you concerned about this? And given your national security background, do you see a coup in America?
Well, I'm very concerned about the use of the rhetoric around this. This is almost psychological warfare preparation of the battlefield. That's what we would say, where they are trying to frame a narrative around the nation now that has a lot more to do than a Mueller investigation. I mean, if the Mueller investigation comes through, it will have been done in the Department of Justice. They're trying to say that the entire framework of the United States government's system of removing a president or finding out dirt about a president, that in itself is tantamount to a military force or a force removing people in power. We just saw a coup in Zimbabwe recently where the first thing that happened was the army hits the streets, they seize all the radio and TV stations. I mean, you know, I'm sure that's Fox's worst nightmare. But this is not a coup. And this language is dangerous. It is, you know, they have a right to
Sure.
But you know what they don't have a right to? Sedition. They don't have a right to undermine the Constitution of the United States.
Richard Painter, I want to read some of the reaction because it has been swift and it has been across the spectrum. Defense One writer Kevin Barron, coup, I cover wars, militaries, actual coups, citizens violently rise up and kill. This is alarmingly irresponsible language, he wrote, even for Fox. A Ted Cruz official said the Fox News use of the word coup is destabilizing U.S. democracy, should be roundly condemned. Former CIA Director John McLaughlin, who you know, clearest example of collusion is among GOP and Fox News to delegitimize Bob Mueller's inquiry. Richard.
Well, I think we are in danger. Our democracy's in danger. But there's one person in control of the military right now. The commander-in-chief is Donald Trump. And there is a risk of him using that power to destroy our democracy, whether you call it a coup or anything else. But it's not from the critics of Donald Trump that the danger is posed. It's the fact that the man who is commander-in-chief of our military is engaged in obstruction of justice and other crimes and is also psychologically deranged. And I think we are in very, very serious trouble. And the next 2 weeks are going to be critical to make sure that Robert Mueller stays in place. And
you say the next 2 weeks, Richard, and we were discussing this at the top of the broadcast. What is it about the next 2 weeks specifically that concern you?
First of all, we're on the holiday, so we have a lot of the members of the House and Senate are away. And if Robert Mueller were to get fired, the only responsible thing to do would be to convene both the House and the Senate Judiciary Committee immediately. And I don't care if that happens to happen on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day or New Year's or whatever. We'd have to swing into action in 24 hours. And they're off on holiday. And the second thing is the Democrats have had a lack of wisdom of forcing out Senator Al Franken, who was probably the most articulate member, certainly one of the most articulate members of the Senate Judiciary Committee. He caught the Attorney General in a perjury trap, and those are exactly the senators we need, and we need congressmen ready to step to the plate within 24 hours if Robert Mueller is fired. And now we have one of our leading members of the Senate Judiciary Committee who apparently is going to resign. So this is a very vulnerable situation over the next few weeks, and we need to get through it so Robert Mueller can finish his job.
Malcolm, listen again to Congressman Gates, who I mentioned in the broadcast, because he has been leading this charge against Mueller, and our producers were researching this, and it turns out he was actually using this same word. It didn't get quite as much attention, but he was using the same word last month.
We are at risk of a coup d'etat in this country if we allow an unaccountable person with no oversight to undermine the duly elected president of the United States. And I would offer that is precisely what is happening right now with the indisputable conflicts of interest that are present with Mr. Mueller.
You look at that, and then, Malcolm, you look at the playbook, and I know you're both a student and an author of history, but this was one of the themes in the last days of Nixon. There was even a private eye guy who covered this book, Silent Coup, and it tried to argue Nixon was forced out of office because of a national security party opposed to foreign policy, as the Washington Post points out. The roots of this aren't pretty, Malcolm.
No, the roots of it aren't pretty at all. And I just find it just disturbing that elected officials in the United States are using this type of rhetoric. My problem with regard to what's being said these days is far more fundamental. It's not that they're just saying it. Fox News is broadcasting this. It's just we have a president who is very susceptible to believing every word that they say.
Right.
And he may get it into his mind that there actually are nefarious plans that equate to a coup. And God knows what he'll do. He may not get the cooperation of the armed forces, but, you know, I mean, the way that he calls favor with the police forces and Department of Homeland Security and the Border Patrol, who knows what can happen here? This is dangerous. It needs to stop. It is unconstitutional and is unconscionable. And I wish that as patriots to this nation, they would A, get a dictionary, look up the definition of coup, and B, stop talking about this in the way that they are, because it could manifest itself either through some small rebellion of you know, guys with guns, or people who think they're going to come to the White House and protect it with semi-automatic weapons. I don't know. It just needs to stop.